Hey, and welcome back to the lab for yet another Maker Talk live stream. We're getting started a little early today. I was ready to go. I figured we'd just kind of jump in. I've got some housekeeping things to go over first. We're going to be talking about the future of making today. It was an unconference style event hosted by Maker Festival at the Ontario Science Centre. Now, if you have not been part of a Maker Festival event and you're in the southwestern Ontario or willing to travel to Toronto, for all that matters, um, and there's a Maker Festival event going on, whether it's the festival or not, or one of the other events that they hold, I have never been disappointed with one of their events. This is no different. I walked away with a lot of new perspectives and a lot of new ideas. We're going to talk about those today. But first, the traditional coffee. Today we are drinking an Ethiopian blend from our friends at Anubis Coffee Importing. If you were in the Cambridge area or the Tri-City area and coffee's your thing, if you Google them, they're out there. Say hi to my buddy Chris. I've known him for years, and he runs a really good shop and makes good coffee. This is 2 grinders full into an 8-cup Bodum and 6.5-minute brew time, and a beautiful beautiful cup of coffee. The second cup, I'm sorry, the second piece of housekeeping I have today, I bought a thing. Those of you who've been with the channel for a while know how absolutely insane my glue gun has been driving me forever. So I bought a new one. It had a bunch of good reviews on Amazon. Hopefully this will save me a lot of stress. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what happened to the old one? Well, short answer, I got angry. So me and my friends went to a rage room in Toronto. Didn't necessarily know if that would be my type of thing, but I came out feeling a lot less stressed, that's for sure. And in short, one glue gun that's been driving me nuts for about a decade. All right. So on to the reason that we're doing the live stream. I attended the Future of Making Unconference, hosted by Maker Festival at the Science Centre. For those of you who don't know, the Ontario Science Centre, let's see if I can get a good picture of that, turned 50 recently. It is a very awesome place to go. It is not just for children, although there was a lot of kids there, it being a weekend. Let's see if I can get the coffee on my mustache. There was a lot of kids there, it being a weekend. It is obviously a great place to take your children as well. Right, but yeah, anytime the Science Center and Maker Festival get together, I am probably going to be there. This event was 2 days. It was done in an unconference format, which, if you're like me, well, prior to this, I had no idea what that meant. Basically, what it means is that there's no schedule to the conference, and the attendees are the ones who set the schedule for the conference. So everybody suggests mini talks and topics for discussions, and then we break off into groups, and we have about 4 sessions a day where you get to choose which sessions you wish to be part of, right, and which sessions you want to partake in. Now, obviously, the only disappointing part of this is you can't be part of every session, right? So I had to choose 8 sessions to be part of. Some of them were, I'm sad that I missed, but scheduling being what scheduling is. And I kind of wanted to talk about the takeaways that I had from this. Now, one of the things, or one of the reasons that this conference was run, is the maker industry has taken a couple hits as of recently. I did a video on the first one we're going to talk about, which was obviously the failure of Make Media, right? despite the fact that that was because of a very, very poorly managed company going bankrupt. It does kind of hit home a little bit, right? So with that, and with we've seen kind of a drop off or a plateau, and then a slight decrease in the amount of people attending maker spaces in the Toronto area. Um, well, it's southwestern Ontario as well, because Quartz Lab is involved in this too. Um, and we were trying to figure out if there was something that we could do better, or if there was something that we were doing that was wrong, that was causing people to walk away from these. Long story short, and I'll go into more detail in a second, but I don't think so. I think a big portion of the drop off we've seen in participation in makerspaces is because more schools are opening makerspaces on their campus. So there's less purpose for somebody to go spend $50, $60 to be part of an organization like Quartz Lab when they can access the one at their college or university for free. Now, does it suck that that draws people away from us? Yes, but it also probably brings in more people. So I think overall there isn't much to necessarily to worry about. At the conference, there was about 120 people, so there was a lot of different opinions and a lot of different ideas. And everybody came from a well, not a radically different, but like a wide, diverse background. It was awesome. I know there was a wait list, and I know Maker Festival had to choose who they were going to invite to the conference, and I'm not exactly sure how they managed to do that. But the ones that they chose was a great cross section. I believe there was one other YouTuber there, but I really didn't get a chance to talk to her. There was a lot of teachers and a lot of professors and people in post-secondary education. There were a lot of people representing the maker spaces around. The event was sponsored by HackLab TO. Actually, let's go take a look at the actual web page for the event. Right. As you can see, presented by Maker Festival and the Science Center. Again, how could you possibly go wrong? So, what I'm looking at here is there was a bunch of sponsors that had worked with this. So, we have the Gorilla Store, because for some strange reason, and I still don't understand why, the Science Center does not have a gift shop. So this is the store that's in the Science Center that is as close to a gift shop as you can get. HackLab TO obviously is one of the maker spaces in Toronto. I'm hoping to see a bunch of familiar faces on February 29th. I'm hoping to go to a social event there. New Makeshore. There was a couple. There was one gentleman there from this. Sorry, there was a couple of gentlemen there from there and Cincy Labs. Again, more focused, I think, maker spaces than anything. So, if we jump over to the manifesto, right, they kind of encapsulate a lot of what's going on here. I'm not going to read their website because, well, that would be boring. But essentially, it derives from the fact that ever since we evolved as a species, we've been building things, we've been making things, and then it seems like our culture shifted to a consumer-based culture. And it turned into, if you want it, you just go buy it type of a situation. And if it breaks, you just throw it away. You don't fix it. I don't think that was the case like pre-World War II. I think pre-World War II, especially the 1930s and 1920s, given the Great Depression there, if something broke, you tried to fix it. If you wanted something and you could make it, you built it. Right? Post-war, I guess we saw an economic boom, and this is what we got from it. So it's now interesting that something that has been part of our species since we evolved is now a new movement, right? But at the end of the day, where the community is going and where we're trying to get to and where we should be getting to is a unique topic that we discussed a lot at this event. One of the sides that I talked about, I led a discussion on making with ADHD. Any of you that have been with the channel for a while know that I have ADHD, and any one of you who have actually watched one of these live streams, it's very clear that I have ADHD. And while I was giving, or not giving, because it's kind of a consensus type of a thing that goes on, while we were doing this session, it came out very much that you can use making as a form of therapy for the neuroatypical. It gives, for example, people with ADHD who suffer with things like RSD, which is rejection sensitivity disorder, where the slightest mistake makes you feel like you killed a cat. Well, in making, failing's part of the process, right? And the rejection and the failure that would normally trigger a bad reaction for somebody with ADHD can now be experienced in a way that is less destructive, and you can learn to understand how your brain reacts to it. There was a few teachers there, and they were looking for ways to better connect and better teach neuroatypical students. So I think I helped a bit with that, and I think they helped me a bit too, because there was a lot of discussion around how making can be used in education and how making can push things forward. Now, there was a bunch of topics that were put out. The second one that I put forward that we talked about was the responsibility of social media in making. So, for example, YouTube, right? If a YouTube person tells you how to do something and they're wrong, and they tell you how to do it dangerously, what responsibility do we have to try to, weed out that bad information and then bring it back into um, some form of reality? And how do we do that? Do we use the comments? Do people even read the comments for all the videos if something is remarkably dangerous to do? If you go back, the CN160 lights, where I went through a hack to give them wall power, I found several people who were doing something that at the very least was going to shorten the life of the light, but at very worst would burn your freaking house down. So it becomes, what is our responsibility as makers, and how does all this play into right to repair? So there's a lot going on in our field that needs to be dissected, needs to be taken apart. And I'm very thankful for Maker Festival for giving us the opportunity to have this discussion. For whatever reason, choosing me to be part of it, that was absolutely awesome. So, yeah, I don't know necessarily how to encapsulate everything that I experienced, but when you enter a room with 120 makers in it, it becomes a very interesting experience for me. I've never been in that situation before. Um, Another idea that was bounced around a lot with the Unconference was people not considering themselves makers, and this is something that my friend, well, not my friend, well, yeah, my buddy Adam Savage has touched on very deeply in his book "Every Tool's a Hammer." And basically, if you enter a space and you leave and something exists that didn't exist before, you're a maker. So some people who are painters might not consider themselves makers. Some people who are sculptors might not consider themselves makers. Writers might not consider themselves makers. But I think from the maker community standpoint, we would all consider all of those makers. I don't know when we decided, or when the world decided, that to be a maker you have to be multidisciplinary, or it's only the people who work with electronics that are makers, or it's only the coders that are makers, because this is obviously not, well, it's not, from my perspective, it's not true. And being one of the original founding members of Quartz Lab, yes, I'm hoping to go back to that makerspace shortly. Um, I never thought that the space should be just for multidisciplined people, or people who write software, or people who work on electronics, despite the fact that that's my form of making. That is by far not the only form of making that there is in this world. Oh, that's a good cup of coffee. Seriously, if you're in the Cambridge area, Anubis Coffee importing, find them, go check them out. Awesome. So yeah, the biggest things that came out of it for me was the idea that neuroatypical people, such as myself, ADHD, can use making to try and deal with some of the emotions and the roller coaster that we deal with every day. There was a lot of talk of people not feeling like they would fit in, like maybe several of the people at makerspaces have gotten to the point where they've gotten so good at their craft that we're possibly intimidating new members. I don't know if that's true. I certainly hope that that's not true, because the whole point of the makerspace, at least in my mind, while we were starting up Quartz Lab, is that this is supposed to be a place that's awesome for people to go and learn. So if people are intimidating new members to the point that they're not necessarily comfortable, or they don't feel like it's a space for them, then that's definitely something that needs to be fixed. I don't know if anybody has an opinion. If you visit in Makerspace that you're not a member of, did you have an experience where, you walked in and there were people who had a skill level that you weren't expecting, and it made you feel like you didn't fit in there? One example that was given was the idea of accessibility. So, can a space be made so accessible for, let's say, people in a wheelchair, that the people not in a wheelchair don't feel like the space is for them anymore? This was another concept that was brought up by a group that was from Makerspace inside of a post-secondary education. And that was a concept that I really hadn't thought of before, but I'd actually experienced. Back when I was younger and in high school, I did some work with KW Accessibility, and I remember walking into their office. Of course, I'm perfectly welcome there. Most of the people in the office were in a wheelchair. I tended like to try to put myself at the same eye level, same height as a person I'm talking to, and I remember the awkward moment of trying to figure out how I do that with somebody who is in a wheelchair. Right? And it really kind of made me feel like I didn't fit in there. And maybe that imposter syndrome type of a situation is what's driving people away from being part of makerspaces. The other thing that might be is the general availability of tools everywhere now. Like when makerspaces were first started, one of the things that drew a lot of people to them was the ability to use tools that you couldn't afford to have, right, in your own lab or in your own house. 3D printers were expensive. Now you can get a decent one for $300, right, as long as you're willing to put some work into it. Laser cutters were $20, $30, $40,000 depending on the laser cutter. Now you can get a decent one from China for under $2,000. So that was the another thing that was put forward with me. But of course, as always, I'd love to hear your opinion. Um, so yeah, I don't think that the first thing that was brought up with the future of making Unconference is an issue. Like, I don't think there's anything that we are doing that's necessarily wrong, but I think there's obvious avenues that we can look at to improve and do things better. Um, Obviously, things like classes and such for the general public often draw more people into the space, but you have to be careful with those because they really need to be a cost neutral type of event. You can't keep losing money on holding events, trying to get members, hoping that their membership will make up that money. It's a long process of figuring out how you survive as a space, because obviously there's a lot of expenses when you're talking about buying expensive tools. You're talking about renting industrial space to work. Things get to be complicated fast. And back when we launched Quartz Lab, I think over a decade ago now, even finding insurance was a nightmare. Because as soon as you tell an insurance agent that you want to set up a community workshop and you're going to let random people play with power tools, uh, they get scared and run, and you don't fit into one of their little boxes. So yeah, that kind of ends that discussion pretty quickly. We did manage to do it, and Quartz Lab is up and running. It has been probably 6, maybe 7 years since I've been there. So it's definitely time for me to go back. It's definitely time for me to see what's happened, and I'm going to. I don't know exactly what Tuesday I'll be able to make it back there, but that is definitely on my list of things to do. Now, the Unconference, it was a interesting experience. It was a great experience. I did thoroughly enjoy my time with them. As I said, there hasn't been a Maker Festival event that I was even remotely disappointed with to this point. So, if you have the chance to attend one, attend one. The Unconference style of a conference, that was interesting. I've been to a lot of conferences in my life. I've been to a lot of discussions in my life, and having it be community led, I think, is a double-edged sword. I think we got to talk about a lot of things, and I think I got to learn a lot of things that I normally wouldn't have gotten to learn about. But I'm not entirely sure we answered the question that we set out to answer, and I'm not sure that Maker Festival got the answer that they were looking for with where we want to go and how we want to get there. Obviously, Maker Festival this year didn't happen, and it has to do with a lot of changes to the laws in Toronto. The library can no longer host the event for the protection of children, apparently. So there has to be something that we have to figure out how we're going to bring the Maker Festival back. Again, with Make Media being offline, the original Maker Fairs have stopped as well. So I think it is on the rest of the community to find a way to bring these back. I don't know if anybody in my audience has ever been to a Maker Festival or a Maker Fair, but they're really awesome events if you're at all interested in making. And to have them fall by the wayside and to not see them again for what I consider to be silly reasons, both, child protection laws and the library not being able to host us anymore, unless every volunteer gets a criminal background check and a child welfare type or vulnerable persons check. That's what it's called. In order to be able to volunteer for this event is probably not the intent of the law. I understand what they're trying to do. Make Media, the CEO making very poor decisions, which has resulted in some of the bigger conferences that we normally have every year just not existing anymore. These are two reasons that, to me, are both sad and shocking. There's so much passion and there's so much talent in what we do, and there is so much willingness to teach and try to reach out, especially to younger children, that to have it go away for the reasons that it has is just, no. So I'm hoping that Maker Festival got enough out of this particular event that we figured out how we're going to proceed, or they figured out how they're going to proceed, and that next year we wind up with a Maker Festival. Essentially what needs to happen is they need to find a new location that's willing to host them. And given the size that we need, there aren't many. All right, and I don't know of many that would, host an event like this for free. The library obviously gained a lot of traction from doing so, so there was a big incentive for them to do it, and there isn't necessarily for other businesses that would be big enough to host this. So we had the Future of Making Unconference instead of the Maker Festival to try and figure out where Maker Festival wanted to go, and I'm hoping that they got their answer. I think the Unconference format, as I said, kind of had us drift off into directions that weren't necessarily where Maker Festival had wanted to try to find the answers for, but at the same time, I had a lot of really great discussions. I'm not, okay, apparently My stream stopped? That's kind of weird. I don't know if I'm back or... Alright, that was weird. YouTube just reported that my stream stopped for a little bit there. I don't know what happened. I don't know if somebody in my house is starting to use the internet. Alright, there we go. Everything seems to be good now. Alright, that was weird, guys. I don't know how many people are watching. I try not to pay attention, but... So yeah, maybe the traditional conference would have been a more direct path to the answer that they want. But I think that if they're asking for my opinion, Maker Festival needs to push forward. We need to find a home for them so that the festivals can happen again. Because Maker Fair and Maker Festival not being around is not acceptable. I think at the other end of everything that is going on, I don't think that the Maker movement is in danger in any way. But I definitely understand that there's been some significant blows to our community. And I think that everything should be continuable, right? Again, I had an amazing time at this event. And any time that Maker Festival and Science Center get together for an event, there is no way that it's not going to be amazing. Both of those, either of those holding an event, and I'm generally there. But at the end of the day, I think we had a lot of awesome discussions, and we had a lot of awesome networking. Did Maker Festival get the answers that they were looking for? I don't know. Right? I was hoping to have some pictures and some video from the event, but those didn't get posted in time for the live stream, so I don't have those. But if you have any comments, by all means, use the section down below. Let me know what people think. Have you ever been to a makerspace? When you were there, did you feel comfortable? Did you wind up becoming a member? All right, let me know what your experiences were, because if there's a takeaway from people who were at one of the open nights, for example, Quartz Lab every Tuesday has the Tuesday open night to bring people into the lab. Then yeah, I want to know what caused you not to go back, or what caused you to go back. I want to be able to take that information and feed it back into Maker Festival, and I want to be able to take that information and feed it back into Quartz Lab when I do return there. Obviously, almost everybody that I know in the making industry and the making movement wants to teach people and wants to connect with people who have a similar mindset to what we do. So, yeah, comments down below. I know that this particular live stream isn't the norm for me. I don't normally just talk about an event and kind of get on a soapbox, but at the end of the day, I wanted to talk about what the experience that I had with Maker Festival was, and I think that going forward, we're going to see a resurgence. We're going to see a reboot. I think that the existence of the maker movement is a reboot in its own. It's almost cyclical because, as I said before, we've been building things since we evolved. It's in our nature. We only became a society of consumers recently, like in the last 100 years or less, have we become a society of consumers versus a society of builders. So, I don't know. I don't think that making is in jeopardy in any way. I think maybe how we network as makers may have to evolve. I think some of it will obviously go online into social media like YouTube and Facebook and 100 other platforms that I'm sure are coming down the pipe. Obviously, Thingiverse, all of the big ones are important to our to our maker movement. So, and Instructables and all of those other ones. So maybe eventually the concept of a makerspace might become a moot point, but I don't think we're there yet. I think that makerspaces serve a very important need. I think that making can help a neurodiverse group of people. I think that it can bring people together and teach skills and give abilities and bring self confidence. I think it should be an integral part in our education of our young people. I maybe I'm getting again soapboxy, but this is my channel, so I'm going to if I want to. But at the end of the day, yeah, that's my takeaway. That the maker movement is much bigger than I ever anticipated it being. Um, it seems to be becoming kind of mainstream even in the education market, both at the post-secondary level, at the elementary school level, and at the secondary school level. So I think that it will survive. I think that as anything, as it ages, we're going to see changes to how people connect and how it grows and how it works. But I think at the end of the day, everything will be fine. Again, I know this is not my normal style of maker talk, not my normal style of let's get on a soapbox, but I wanted to bring attention to Maker Festival. I wanted to bring attention to the Ontario Science Centre. I wanted to bring some awareness of what our community is talking about and what the leaders in our community are talking about, what we're trying to do and how we can do it. And I really wanted to get your opinion on a lot of this stuff. So, with the future of making, what do you think? Where do you think we're going? Right? How can we bring back the environment of the Maker Festival and the Maker Fair now that those have gone away from us? Uh, what do you feel the role of making in education is? By all means, comments down below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss any of the content that we produce in the lab. I hope you learned something today, and I will see you next time.